everyone. So I'm basically doing today's video because I've run out of time for 2 recordings and I'm not speaking with another trainee until tomorrow, but I also understand that I've only put up like 2 videos this week, so wanted to kind of fill the gap with something. I'm sorry I've not stayed on top of it as well as I'd hoped. I just had an exam this week, so I've been focusing on that a little bit more. But also I've had quite a lot of questions about reflection and how to like attack the reflective piece that you've got to do. So obviously we didn't have to do that when we were applying, but I kind of would have preferred that to the questions because reflection is such a big part of the STP. I think it would have been good to have a practice at it and understand it a little bit more before I started, because coming from a uni background I didn't really have much experience in reflection at all. We'd never had to write down any kind of reflective writing. Everyone reflects day to day, but I think just like the more formal reflection, I'd never done that apart from for work appraisals, and I always found that a bit difficult, but I only had it twice a year, so I didn't put in loads of like extra work into learning how to do it properly. So yeah, I thought I'd just do a little video on kind of what you need to be reflecting on, where you could get examples of it, and then how to go about that process, and hopefully it'll help someone. So as I'm sure everyone probably knows, you'll need to be mapping your application to the core person specification, which is on the National School website, so it's quite easy to get a hold of, and that's the same for all specialisms. It's very general, and there's 4 main groups to it. So you've got qualifications, transferable skills, scientific skills, and the physical requirements. So I'd say the qualifications and the physical requirements you can't really argue with. Qualifications, obviously you need a 2-1 or above in your undergrad or integrated masters, and then you can have a 2-2 or above in your undergrad if you've got a higher degree like a master's to go along with that. And that all needs to be related to your specialism. Like, I don't know, you can't do something completely out of the park. And then the physical requirements, so you've got good attendance, the ability to do the job, so things like being able to turn up to work, having good hand-eye coordination, understanding the job role, that kind of thing. So as long as you do your research and pick a nice reference that likes you, should be fine with those as well. So the last 2 are the ones that I think they'll be really important for the reflective bit, because they're the bits that you can kind of argue your case for. So you've got scientific skills, and that's just general things that you'd expect, I suppose, so like problem solving, being able to understand why a test didn't go to plan, or why something isn't working properly, because at the end you will be running things kind of by yourself, so you need to be able to problem solve for any issues that come up. You've got analysis, so being able to interpret those results. You need to be able to think about what everything means, have good like understanding of analytical methods. Quality control, so why is it so important? How can you make sure that quality is maintained? That kind of thing. That's a big one across all specialisms, I'm sure. And then things like interest. So I found that one, to begin with, quite difficult. We had that in the questions as well, like show your commitment to science or something like that. So I found it quite difficult to begin with. But you just got to think about all of the things that you've done. Obviously you've done your degree in science, so that is one bit of interest, and if you've done like a higher degree on top of that, that shows that you're like committed a little bit more. But just try to think about like other things that show that you are interested as well, because everyone's going from a degree, so just trying to like stand out a little bit from that. So yeah, that's an obvious one, but it's just important to kind of make sure that you're showing that throughout your application. And then troubleshooting, so yeah, same as problem solving, I guess, being able to understand the workflow and why something might not go to plan. Cool, so then you've got transferable skills. this I think is a little bit easier to kind of use everyday work-based examples. They don't have to necessarily be clinical. And I think these are some of the things that are really important. You may think like, oh, okay, like let's just get the buzzwords and fill those out. But just saying like, I have good communication skills doesn't show that you have them, and everyone's going to write that. And it's such an important part of any of the specialisms, even if it's not patient facing. So you might not be communicating with patients directly, but you'll be communicating with clinicians, and they might not have an understanding in genomics, for example. That's just my specialism. So you'd need to be able to kind of explain what the test offers. Obviously, normally they'll go to like genetic counselling, so they'll be able to understand it a little bit better, but the clinician needs to know what they're offering, so you'll have to communicate that with them. And part of good communication is active listening, so you'll know what you're going into a meeting or going into a conversation to say, but you need to kind of take on board their responses to that and integrate that into your answer, instead of like, I don't know, you've planned it all out in the shower and you're just going to go along word for word. So yeah, I think that's a massive one, and it's important, and it's like easy to overlook the transferable skills and just think that they're like going to be the easy part of the application. There's also like organisation, so that I think is so important for the STP. You have to be really organised. There are like 101 things going around in my head at any one moment, so I have to like write them all down, and when I don't, I just forget like 80% of that. So I use something called Notion online to kind of track my competencies, track my assessments for uni, track any piece of evidence that I've got for certain competencies that might overlap. I use that. Sorry, I've gone off topic. And then you've got like leadership. So you need to be able to influence, but also take on board other people's viewpoints and other people's expertise, and be able to work well in a team, but also work well like organising a team. And then team working, again, being able to take direction and take criticism and take feedback. Obviously constructive criticism, you don't have to sit there and take someone being nasty. Oh, and that's the last one that it says, or one of the ones that it says in the core specification. Like I had a look at it a few minutes ago and it made me laugh. So it said something about emotional resilience, and that is really important. I will give them that. You need to be able to kind of work through difficult situations, but also like, I am not the most emotionally resilient person in the world, so I wouldn't worry if you aren't either. I think emotion is a really important thing to have in healthcare. You obviously don't want to be emotional all the time, but being able to experience like good emotions and bad emotions helps you kind of put yourself in the patient's shoes and effectively just try to work a little bit harder for the outcome, I guess. So yeah, don't be too worried about that one, because you can get there. So yeah, that's kind of what you're aiming to get in your application. And then obviously you need to make it a lot more geared towards your specialism itself. So reflection itself, I think you need to kind of bring in all of those points that I just talked about, or as many as you can, and be able to integrate reflection into that, but also not make it sound like, here's one piece of reflection, here's another piece of reflection, here's another piece of reflection, like all disparate. You want to, if you can reflect on one thing and bring it into another thing later on, that's really good and kind of shows that you're planning your answers and thinking them through and linking bits together and showing how one thing has helped another, and like kind of rounded you into a better, not a better person, but better like organised. It makes you kind of better for the job. Ramble. So reflection can be good and bad. I think you don't have to necessarily just think of the bad bits, and we all do it subconsciously. If you're late for an exam or late for work or something, then you might turn up to work flustered and rushed, and then things at work might not go very well. You might be like pulled up for being late. What you're doing might not go to plan, and then the next day you're probably going to leave a little bit earlier to not get to work late, if that makes sense. So you do it subconsciously, but I think the written process of reflecting is a lot more difficult if you're not particularly used to it. I know nurses do a lot of reflection in their degrees. I think they keep like a reflective diary, and that's something that we have to keep as well. So I don't necessarily reflect on like every week. I definitely don't reflect on every day, but I kind of pick out certain things. Like I've just done a piece of reflective work on the genomics exam we had. So that was like our first uni exam, and it was open book, so I did a little bit on that. So yeah, it's not the nicest thing to do if you're thinking about something that didn't go to plan or didn't go very well, because you do have to kind of revisit how you felt during that situation, and no one likes to not feel like they've done a good job. But without doing it, I don't think you can improve your practice, which is obviously really important in healthcare, because then you're going to be not improving yourself and not helping patient outcomes, basically. But you can, if something bad happens and you reflect on it and decide what you're going to do next time, and then the next time it happens, something good happens, you can kind of reflect and be like, okay, so it didn't go right the first time, but I've sorted it out now, and I know I'm not going to do it again. So I think the process of reflection is to kind of think about the situation, think about how it was set up. I'll try and think of an example as I'm explaining this. Think about your role in it, so that would be really important. You need to think about how you acted, what your role was, and then you can think about other people's actions as well. But with it being an application, you may want to kind of gear it to what you did and how that either helped or didn't help, and what you've learned from it. So yeah, think about what your role was, think about how you felt, and then analyse why something happened the way that it happened, if that makes sense. So let me try to think. I used to work in like tutoring, so I'll use like a hypothetical example. I didn't actually do this. So like letting the children in and out of the centre. If you were at the front desk and a parent came to pick up their child, and you just went like, oh yeah, thinking that you knew who the child was, or who the child's parent were and who they were there to collect, you go and get their kid and their kid, and then you let out the wrong child with this parent. So that could obviously be very bad. But then next time you might think, okay, so I need to make sure that I know exactly who is picking up who. So I'm going to be like, okay, who are you here to collect? And make sure that you're double checking all the way through that process, if that makes sense. So that's a very quick reflection that was fake. So it's probably not the best one. I'm sure you can think of better ones in your application. But yeah, it is a really big part of the STP, so it's good to get some kind of practice of it before you start. So with my reflections at the start, I followed like different models, so kind of see which one works best for you. So I think two that I quite liked were Gibbs cycle and the Atkins and Murphy model, I think. So it just helps to begin with to help frame your writing, and make sure that you're not going off on like a tangent. But if I know the school, they've probably given you quite a small word count, so make sure that you're not writing like reams and reams and reams about a situation. So one thing you could reflect on would be like if a lab test hasn't gone right, and that's kind of messed up a couple of weeks worth of work, you could reflect on that. It's obviously not going to make you feel very well, it's going to impact the rest of your project progress, but you troubleshooted what went wrong and kept like a clear log of everything that you need to do better for next time, etc. And then it didn't happen again and your experiment got back on track or something. So that could be like a university based one, but you can also use things in work as well, and they don't have to be as dramatic as letting a person leave with the wrong child. They could just be like getting orders wrong at work if you work in hospitality and stuff, and thinking about the downstream effects. They don't have to be like the worst thing that's ever happened. Hopefully there won't be. A good one to do would be if you changed a process. So if you like brought in something new that wasn't been doing before, what hadn't been happening before, in work or uni, or I don't know, a society, if you were in a society, because that shows that like not only have you reflected and been like, right, I'm not going to do that the same next time, you've also kind of put that into process and made concrete changes that mean other people aren't going to make the same mistake as well. Because I think being able to share when things haven't gone to plan is important, just to be able, it helps people like know that you can like grow from a mistake, and B helps other people not make the same one. So I think it's like a win-win. And then if you've done it, someone else will be like, oh, I did this and it didn't work, or I did this and it did work, and then you can kind of build together. So yeah, try to interlink your experiences, as I was saying. So if you did something that helped an organisational process at work, then you can be like, and I moved this alongside into my research projects, and it helped me speed up or make my life easier for the rest of the project or something like that. So yeah, I think that are my main tips. The way I'd do it, but this probably wouldn't work for everyone, is to write down the things I want to include and do reflections for them individually, just like bullet points. Try to find themes between them, and then afterwards like write it all out in like good writing. That's not good English, but yeah, you know what I mean. So write it out in full afterwards once you've got all of your words, because otherwise you might start and be like, oh, I need to reach the word count, and just kind of ramble for a little bit, and then everything will be kind of like shortened at the end. But yeah, hopefully this has helped, and I think there are some really good ideas online. So if you need kind of guidance on the actual model itself, just go online and there's loads. And they're basically just questions as well. So it's like, what was the situation? What was your role in it? How did it make you feel? What are you going to do next time? So it's really easy to follow. But yeah, take those points and try to make it not so bum, 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 if that makes sense. Cool, so hopefully this worked or was helpful. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some more time for 2 videos up tomorrow. So yeah, I'll see you then. Right, bye bye.